Hello, I'm Vincent Romano, Managing Director of Southeast Asia for Elliott Scott HR Recruitment. Welcome to everyone to Elliott Scott's latest visual extravaganza, which we have named HR Insights, Making Headlines. And why not? During the last few months, we have seen a huge surge in webinars, podcasts, and video posts on LinkedIn. So why, you may ask, do we need another one? My answer is because here, we will be discussing more newsworthy stories, steering away from well-trodden topics, and we aim to be a bit more harder hitting. And well, the world needs more of me, and my guests for today's show, Chris Reed, Justin Liu, and Anitha Ramakrishnan. If you've seen our teasers promoting the show, you will know that our broadcast takes the form of a panel discussion, where we will be reviewing some of the latest news stories from, and bear with me, HRM Magazine, Human Resources, and the Harvard Business Review. But to kick things off, I'd like to invite each of our guests today to introduce themselves and to answer one essential interview question. Today's interview question is taken from Response Web Recruitment's 100 most ridiculous interview questions ever, with today's question being, if someone wrote a biography about you, what do you think the title should be? Now, obviously, this question comes up all the time in interviews, so it's great to be prepared for this, just in case. So, Justin, can I ask you to kick things off and let us know about yourself and your imaginary biography?
Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Liu. I'm at Noble Group HR. I'm Director for Awards here. I've been in Singapore for about 2 years, moving from Hong Kong and originally from Australia. So, hi, everyone. I guess a biography title for me would be Falling into HR. I had to think about this a lot because I definitely didn't set out to be in HR. And some of my friends that know me personally would probably struggle to see me as a people person. But here I am. I'm in HR and Director of Awards, but also covering many generalist topics as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Justin. And same question to you, Chris, what would your book be?
Well, I already have 4 books, and they're very much autobiographical anyway, so it would only be The Only CEO with a Mohawk. What else could I use it for? So I am the founder and The Only CEO with a Mohawk, and I am a founder of CEO of Black Marketing, which is basically makes rock stars out of individuals and CEOs and entrepreneurs across the world. And that's what we do. Excellent. Thank you very much. And Anitha, can you tell us about yourself and your biography as well?
Sure. I'm Anitha. I am the HR leader for the Insights business for Kantar. I look after about 12 markets across Asia at this stage. I'm originally from India, but been in Singapore for about close to 13, 14 years and counting. And I'm a Singaporean here now. Biography, I did think about that quite a bit as well. And I think it would be something on the lines of unfinished, the people transformation. I've been doing a ton of transformation the last couple of years. And it feels like every year it's a new transformation, it's a new journey.
Excellent, that's lovely to hear. So lots going on there for sure over there at Kantar. Yeah, excellent. So will we kick off for our first publication? We'll take a look at the Singapore August to September edition of HRM Magazine. And we'll just get that up again. Here, the godfather of HR, Dave Ulrich, is featured. And in the article, let me see, Shaping the Future of HR, he begins by saying that the global pandemic has heightened human resources relevance to business success by increasing pressure on the world of work. So, first question I'll direct to Anitha. Do you feel that HR has a louder voice?
Well, yes, absolutely. And I think HR has had a louder voice even before the pandemic, but I guess with the pandemic, the voice has sort of shifted. You know, I think before the pandemic, there was a lot of conversations around, growth and transformation. But when slowly we, as the pandemic sort of unleashed in all of our markets, I think the focus increasingly became safety. We just wanted, like yourselves, we just wanted all of our employees to be safe and well taken care of. And from that perspective, human resources has been, out there in the front, partnering with our leadership team, to sort of shift their own leadership style from, being the visionary and all of that good stuff to being more empathetic. Let's listen to our employees. What do they need? What kind of support do they need? I think there's a thing about, we like going really fast when it comes to a lot of things. So we wanted to deliberately slow down and sort of look at different people's, needs. There were obviously kids with all of us. And if you have kids, you know exactly what that means. With younger kids, sort of, having the whole online schooling, it was a complete new transformation that our kids had to go through, sort of supporting them, supporting our families. I think from an HR perspective, we really were out there helping our leaders sort of look at that broader horizon that, we need to slow down now so that we can go faster at a later time. And then, of course, the whole workforce sort of in terms of working from home, the overnight switch in many of our markets, so we just had to, get ready, up and running in terms of working from home. So definitely, yes, I think has been at the forefront in a very different capacity, leading through this pandemic.
Yeah. Would you say you've got a seat at the table?
Absolutely, yes, that's a definite yes. I think you've got the people hat on and you're at the table. So, as much as everybody's talking about business and financials, with the people hat on, because ultimately it's your people who are your, your competitive advantage and your, drivers of success.
That's great to hear. It really is. Thank you very much. Justin, how has HR become more relevant in your organization?
Well, I actually think HR's always been very relevant. There's always been a role to play because there's always a pressure on the company and on companies in general to perform. And where do you get that performance from? It's largely driven by the people. So the pressures have been slightly different. Previously, as Anitha mentioned, it was around growth and maybe cost pressures as well. And now there's a pressure to respond in different ways. Pressure in some ways to survive for some companies. For us, it's about rethinking the way we do some things. And that always has a people basis, working from home as well. These are different pressures, but it's still responding to those commercial and market pressures. And our people are really how we drive that change. I mean, we've seen some companies that have reduced employee headcount to protect themselves. And then there are some companies that have chosen to protect their employees by reducing, say, everyone's work or pay packets. So there are different ways to respond to that. But at the end of the day, these are people decisions and their management decisions. And HR, I think, has always had a seat at the table, has always been relevant, doesn't need an excuse to become more relevant. I think companies are like people in some ways. You increase the pressure and you fall back into your habits and your actions, and your values drive some of those actions. So, HR has a really important role in terms of working with business leaders to navigate and implement the people decisions to achieve some of those commercial outcomes. And it really is about those commercial outcomes, but guided by the company's values. And I don't think that changes, and I don't think that has changed. It's just some of the pressures have required a different response.
That's really interesting. To put the shoe on the other foot, rather, has the business become more human, do you think, during this pandemic?
It's a great question. I think, just like how some people during the pandemic, during lockdown, they find an excuse to exercise and they have more time to get fit and healthy. And some people have less time and they maybe cook more or bake more and eat more. It really does depend on the values of the company and the priorities of the company to really drive some of those changes in behavior. And some of those are, the pandemic has just been a catalyst, if you like, to accelerate or to exaggerate some of those responses. So those companies that are people companies, people focused, probably become more so. And those people and those companies which have perhaps less so and more, should I say, commercially focused first, have become more so as well.
I really hope so. I really hope so. I really hope that the businesses have become a lot more people focused. In the same article, Ulrich later suggests 5 key principles for companies to consider as they continue to formulate their COVID-19 recovery plans. Let me just get this up for us here. These are increasing customization. A one-size-fits-all approach may no longer be appropriate. Redefining the boundaries of work from workplace to work values. Navigating the paradox of individual requirements or against short-term company decisions and long-term goals. Uncertainty, or rather tolerating uncertainty. And seeking guidance from others. Justin, let's stay with you. Do these principles resonate with you?
Definitely they resonate, but maybe I'm going to say something a little bit controversial. You know, Ulrich's a very smart guy. He's really sharp. He's sharp to identify those trends, but they started before COVID. And COVID has accelerated perhaps the need for companies to respond to these trends. But let's take tolerating uncertainty. You know, people have been talking about VUCA and resilience for years. And if you haven't been addressing this, then you're probably a bit late for this. Redefining work from place to values is really summarizing globalization and the internet. And on point 1, he even admits that increasing customization is not new, but it's about being able to adapt. And now we have new tools to enable us to adapt. And so we definitely have to be on top of that. So I actually think he's actually not saying anything new, but pointing out something which the trends which, if we haven't already been responding to them, then we definitely need to respond to them because they have been accelerated by the pandemic.
Yeah, well, the practical, the sensible sort of solutions. I think everyone's looking for Ulrich's next model, but I think what he's giving us is more of a structure to work with. Chris, now obviously you consult on employer branding. What have you experienced during the pandemic?
Well, I mean, like we tend to work for CEOs who are obviously the leaders when it comes to their people and their peers, and they're influencing customers, clients, you know, the media and so forth. So it's very much been about how the leader is then being projecting themselves to give everybody else beneath them confidence. And a lot of the time having to give bad news in terms of, you know, look at the numbers, especially if in the hospitality sector, give a series of, you know, retrenchments or, you know, hoping that they won't have to do it. But then, you know, after 6 months and coming up to a year now, maybe kind of looking at the numbers and going, this isn't going to get any better in 2021. Therefore, let's make the break now. But otherwise, we're going to have serious financial difficulties in 2021. So I think a lot of the people we work for have actually rode the wave of the COVID and actually benefited from it. So a lot in the cloud, a lot in technology, people who are focused, who are lean and mean, and who are basically able to cut out a lot of other things. It's interesting what the other two said about the HR functions. I obviously work for an SME. I run my own SME. We work for SMEs. They don't tend to have HR people. We don't miss HR people, and they don't tend to miss HR people because the CEO is effectively the HR person. So basically, you know, we don't have the luxury of having an HR person in my team. Most of the people we work for, between 10 and 100 people, and they're the founders and CEOs, don't tend to have an HR person in the team. And that's 99% of people employed in Singapore, I hate to tell you as well, do not have an HR function. Therefore, it's the CEO who becomes the HR function. If you're lucky enough to have a co-founder, it might be the co-founder, the COO. But you have to multitask because we don't have the luxury of being able to afford that. And that during the COVID situation is a good thing, because obviously when people look at, well, who's contributing to revenues and who's contributing to substance in terms of the company, obviously you look at revenue generating people first and say, okay, they're bringing in this, or they're keeping this particular client happy, and that's bringing the revenue and it's paying everyone's salaries. Therefore, you know, people who are not doing that kind of thing are probably looking over their shoulders at the moment going, oh, I'm going to be next. And I know a lot of people in functions that are not revenue generating who are getting the chop because of that.
So in black marketing then, given you're the founder, that means you're the HR then?
Well, yes, apart from the fact with the COVID situation actually is a catalyst to change our model completely, and we've actually moved to an outsourced model whereby we no longer have an office in Singapore. We don't need one. Most of our clients are overseas. And even the people we have here, we have meetings on Zoom with people in Singapore, apart from my evening networking, which is a different kind of function in terms of being a catalyst to find potential clients or just wheel the industry basically. But we've gone to an outsourced model where we're working with partners around the world to source to basically the best in class and then deliver for our clients, which I actually find. But it's very much it's a very streamlined operation now. Many people are doing the same thing, and we work for many outsourced kind of people platforms who are doing the same thing and are benefiting enormously. Their revenues are doubling, quadrupling, because people are saying, well, I don't need to employ anyone full time now. I don't need to basically have an HR function. I can basically just pick the best person for this particular task or this 6-month project or this particular client. And when that client leaves, then that person also leaves as well. And they make it very much more focused on the bottom line, which obviously everyone's going to have to be very focused on in 2021, as everyone expects the kind of the recession, the global recession, to get worse in 2021, not better.
Yeah, and I think with you outsourcing, I think the current pandemic has leveled the playing field for that to happen. People don't need to be sat in the same country anymore that they're actually doing the work for.
Massive opportunity. People in Singapore, and I posted several times about this on LinkedIn, they keep saying, oh, we've got to protect ourselves and no more foreigners, all the rest of it. And they're not looking positively at it and saying, well, actually, if the whole thing is equalized now, you can go after jobs in America. You can have to go after contracts in the UK. You can go after contracts in China. It doesn't necessarily mean a threat, it's an opportunity. So it depends whether you look at kind of glass half full or glass half empty. If you really look at, as a lot of people going, oh, these foreigners are stealing my jobs, it's like you're always going to think basically you're in a loser because it's never going to get better than this. Whereas you look positively, you can say, well, actually, now I can run a small little business and I can actually outsource my own work, or I can give my work, or I can get work with other people and offer my services to people beyond the boundaries of Singapore. And that's the whole point here. It's a massive opportunity for people to work from home, as everyone is doing now remotely, and get work from overseas and bring them into Singapore, which obviously would benefit the Singapore government and benefit all of us if they did. That's a different mindset, and it's not really happening as much as I would have hoped it would.
Yeah, Singapore needs to steal other countries' jobs. It's like, I love that. I love that. Excellent. Moving on to our next publication, we'll take a look at Human Resources Magazine for the Singapore edition for July to August 2020. So again, I'll just bring that up on screen. In the lead article on this issue, Driving an Accelerated Growth Mindset, Agnieszka Romanchuk, Head of HR JPAC at AbbVie, talks about various initiatives to develop a growth mindset. And that's something that we talked a lot about as well over here at Elliott Scott. One of these initiatives is their Go Wider, Go Farther talent acceleration campaign, which was launched to articulate a new accelerated growth mindset to encourage employees to look beyond their current roles, exploring different pathways and job agility, maybe even touching upon what Chris has just talked about there. Anitha, does your company encourage employees to take on different career paths to the ones they're in already?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, growth mindset is one of our core behaviors. So earlier this year, when I crafted my goals and goals for the rest of the teams, it was important for us to call out what does that growth mindset translate for me, as an employee. So personally for me, it does mean that in my remit of work, what else am I doing which I am passionate about? So I've actually got the freedom to think about what I'm passionate about and then dedicate time to it. It also means that I was passionate about doing an external leadership course, and I pursued one. I was interested with no travel. I actually had the time to pursue a course with Stanford. So that was something which was integral, which was very personal to me. from a career perspective, we are just moving into, from being a traditional market research company 2 years ago, now we're increasingly moving to a very domain and expertise-led company, which really means that, someone in a brand domain or expertise, they have the flexibility to go move horizontally and take on, one of our other domains is creative, or you could go to something more technology driven, which could be marketplace. So I think as a company, we are now really inculcating the value, the growth mindset around, hey, you need to, explore out of your comfort zone. Life could actually, as much as you can learn more, it can be really more fun. So we have been actively propagating a lot of that, in the realms of behaviors, and these are rewarded as well in different forms and shapes. So yes, it's very personal for all of us in my organization.
Well, it's great to hear that you're walking the talk, not just doing the HR sets, and getting everyone to get out their comfort zone. Justin, does your organization have any initiatives to encourage a growth mindset?
I think this article is very interesting. I mean, I've worked in large organizations, and now I'm working in a relatively small organization with a few hundred people, but spread across the whole globe. In large organizations, you really need to encourage a common mindset, which is, which HR helps to, where HR helps to foster a common language so that people can talk about talent consistently and share talent and have talent mobility. In a smaller organization, as Chris mentioned, it's a slightly different dynamic because you're in touch with a lot of the people, and maybe the co-founders will actually know all or most of the people. And then the mindset is really about people having the security and safety to put up their hands and say, yes, I want to do this, or I have an idea, and then going with that. So that's how it is in Noble. If you have an idea, if you want to do something, you put your hand up, and you'll be noticed. You'll be given an opportunity to do something. So I think it's about fostering that sort of culture. In larger organizations, because not everyone knows everyone else, and not even all HR knows other HR, you need programs to facilitate internal mobility and a more, I would say, a more complex and systematic talent management process.
Yeah, I've got to agree with that. Over here at Elliott Scott, we're a much smaller company, but our boss, Stuart Elliott, definitely encourages an entrepreneurial culture and mindset, where we actively encourage our staff to put up their hand if they see an opportunity. And we will do our best to support it, even if it is a little less conventional. But that's really interesting to hear, Justin. Chris, have you personally changed your career function? I know that you had a career before black marketing, but I had to scroll so far down on your LinkedIn profile, I couldn't find it because you've got so much content there. How has your career changed?
My career hasn't really changed because I've always been marketing first. I had a marketing job when I was 16 and at university. I was in a retail environment doing marketing, and I've always had marketing businesses. I've been marketing director, CMOs, and then all my businesses I've created, my 5 businesses, have always been marketing focused. So marketing is absolutely key to what I've actually been. But what has changed is kind of the way I've looked at the resources in the organization in terms of things like the sales and marketing attitude and how you win clients across the world without having to travel. And LinkedIn's fantastic for that, Zoom's fantastic for that, and it's really equalized businesses like mine, which are all online, and helping other businesses which are online actually win business across the world. And it helps salespeople. It really empowers and enables salespeople across the world to actually win clients anywhere. So if you take, for example, a designer in Singapore who suddenly, got no work, maybe they were doing hospitality here. They go, I got no work because I was doing hospitality here. That's all dried up. What do I do? Well, it's like the opportunity there is to go across, Malaysia or Indonesia and in Hong Kong, or go to China. And you just do it. When I say go, I mean do it on LinkedIn. Because you can now find someone and say, well, look, I've done this fantastic hotel here in Singapore. The hotels in Singapore are not spending any more on design. I'll go to Shanghai, where they're opening up hotels left, right, and center because all the domestic tourists are like traveling left, right, and center. and they're spending money there. So it enables you, if you've got the mindset, you've got to shift that mindset and say, I can actually go to a market which is thriving, like say Australia or New Zealand, or basically Vietnam or China or Hong Kong, and say there's money there because the economies are actually going up. So stop targeting Europe and America, which is a car crash at the moment, and come back to them maybe in 2023 when they've kind of sorted themselves out, and then focus on the Asia and the Asian countries, which are doing very well. And that's really kind of like how everyone should be approaching this. Bizarrely, kind of like everyone's borders are closed, but actually online, everyone's borders are now open.
Yeah. And having that change of mindset to open up the borders for you. In the same issue of Human Resources Magazine, the article Total Rewards in the New Normal, How Companies in Asia Are Supporting and Motivating Staff. I'll just bring that up for you. This article addresses how total rewards programs can be tweaked to support and motivate staff through this tough period. Justin, has Noble Group changed their compensation philosophy?
Thanks for asking, Vincent. I think it's really important not to have a knee-jerk reaction. Changing a compensation philosophy that aligns with the company's values and long-term goals may not be exactly what's needed for everyone, but definitely responding to some of the changes and building a sense of trust and enhancing the employer-employee relationship during times of pressure and stress are really important. And there are some simple changes that can be made to the total reward structure, and we've made some of those as well. So, for example, there are huge pressures on costs and salaries. And so, for instance, on bonus plans, where otherwise you may have firm targets and formula, maybe it requires some understanding this year. And that's a discussion with the business leaders and building of that trust and working on the relationships to make sure, you know, the company is responding. This is not a normal year. Other measures, for instance, are tweaking some of our benefits programs. An example where we haven't needed to introduce anything, but really just to make people aware of is, for instance, our EAP, where people that are undergoing stress, maybe they have personal issues, they haven't been able to travel, they may have things happening at home, they can call up someone, and the company has given them an avenue to deal with some of their mental well-being issues. And that's not something new, it's just people didn't know about that before. Some of the other measures, we have had to let some people go, for instance, and extending some benefits to those. It really shows understanding. And, you know, word gets around how you treat people. This is, at the end of the day, a relationship between the employee and the employer, and there needs to be adaptability and flexibility both ways. And hopefully, at the end, the employer and employee relationship is stronger for having adapted and changed together. Cheeman Madoka in the article says, employees always remember how companies and their managers treated them, even more so when times are difficult. And I truly believe that.
Okay, interesting. So instead of sort of changing the major framework, you've been just tweaking some of the programs as you go along.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Anitha, what mental health and wellbeing initiatives have been introduced over at Kantar?
That's a very good question, Vincent, because we have started looking at and it's quite pertinent, right? Because this month is the mental health month, actually. So from that perspective, very similar to what Justin was sharing, you know, we had sort of, you know, reintroduced some of our rather, you know, brought forward the EAP programs, you know, in some of our markets, and just making sure that people have access. We've also looked at exclusive access to, you know, some very specific EAP programs for some of our employees in different markets. And I think from that perspective, just the whole culture, you know, I think we've actually sat back and looked at the whole work culture. And I think I was sharing with you earlier, you know, when you go at a very fast pace and, you know, just sort of a pandemic strikes, you really have to step back and really recognize what is, you know, most important. And I think just raising the awareness of mental health in our workplace in itself has had a huge benefit. One of the things that we have just launched actually is a campaign for all our employees where we have invited some of our employees who've had mental health issues, some of the carers, as in some of our employees who've been carers, we've invited them to, we welcome them to actually share their experiences. In the whole spirit that, if there is anyone out there who is suffering from any form of anxiety, mental health issues, they should speak to somebody. It's that, we've got a physical problem. We talk about it quite easily, but we generally have a stigma around mental health, and sort of breaking down the barriers around that stigma and really speaking up about it, and sort of seeking help at an early stage. So we've really driven a campaign, and we're continuing to drive a campaign. And we've got this internal workplace where we sort of post openly, all these employee videos are out there.
Well, it's great that you guys are addressing that, because obviously, the longer things drag on, and things are dragging on, the greater sort of stresses we'll have in terms of mental health as well. Yeah, that's very good. For our last news story, we take a look at the Harvard Business Review's discussion on employee performance versus company values, a manager's dilemma. I'm just bringing that up now. In this podcast, the Harvard Business Review asks, should a high performer who brushes off company values be promoted? So a nice controversial one to finish up on. Let's go to Chris to kick things off. Should a high performer who disregards company values be promoted? What do you think?
Well, it depends if they're contributing in other ways. So basically, if you look at the star performers at many companies, then basically they often are breaking boundaries, they're often breaking ceilings, they're often smashing things, and they're innovating, they're very creative. But they'll often be the highest performer, but they also might be the most disliked and the most least political. So it basically, if as long as they're performing, they should be rewarded, they should be promoted, they should be bonused. Because you have to allow star players, like you allow star football strikers, or you allow star, guitarists, or you allow stars in any field, like in Elon Musk. I mean, that's a great example of someone who basically just doesn't have any rules at all, and just basically says, "I'm going to be doing this," and basically, but he's a winner. An absolute winner in terms of what he does and how he achieves it. And basically he smashes things and he alienates people and he polarizes, but delivers. And you've got to basically be allowable within your systems and organizations to be that. And a lot of Singapore companies don't allow that at all. They basically don't fit into your box. Basically you're out. You don't get promoted and you don't get rewarded. And those people will probably go on to become successful entrepreneurs. But you've got to basically allow people to be creative and to be different, because not everyone fits in a box, as we can see.
This is true. Justin, is it all about the money?
It's never all about the money, Vincent. Money can't buy everything. But it depends on your organization, really. Look, I listened to another great podcast from Simon Sinek. And he talked about individuals who perform versus individuals you can trust. And obviously you don't want someone who has low performance and you can't trust them. But when faced with the choice of someone who is high performance and low trust versus someone who is medium performance but trustworthy, and perhaps their performance is affected because they put team members above themselves, then the higher performing organizations that he was talking about anyway, in his example, the Navy SEALs, put trust above performance. And if you're in a team environment, I think that holds true. If you're in a team environment, you need someone who can accentuate the performance of the team and not just focus on themselves. But if you're in a very entrepreneurial individual environment, then you probably want that star performer who's willing to break the rules. So the reality is that a company that promotes someone with the high performance and poor values is probably culturally aligned to that way of thinking. And the company that doesn't is not. And it's HR's role to guide the leaders on these decisions, keeping in mind the company's values and its long-term goals. There's no black and white line, and it's challenging. It requires a lot of soft skills. So there's no right answer on this one.
So, Anitha, Justin said there's no solid line there. Do you agree with that? Is there a line? Where is the line?
It's a tough question, right? And I think if you ask HR folks, you're going to get very consistent answers to this question. And also, you know, in my own experience, I spent about a decade in HP when HP was one big company. And very early on in my career, HP fired one of its most successful CEOs, a guy called Mark Hurd, who eventually went on to become the CEO for Oracle, a co-CEO, and, you know, anyway, he's no more, bless his soul. The story I'm trying to make is he was a very successful CEO, but at one point he breached, you know, the code. You know, there were trust issues, and hence the company had to set an example. And the example that was set was even the CEO needs to follow the values. So I have to agree with a lot of what Justin said, which is really, you know, performance is important, you know, but it's not just about the what, it's also about the how, because, you know, your team is ultimately more important, you know, than the individual. I think that messaging is important from a company perspective. You know, the smaller to the bigger company, obviously the dynamics shift, but overall, it's really important how you show up at work and if you can relate and trust, you know, your colleagues, because that's one aspect which will lead to a high performance. You know, there needs to be inherent trust. You need to see that people, you know, are following a certain set of values, or sort of, you know, your personal values reflect those company values, else it sort of becomes a bit harder for people to relate to each other from a culture perspective. Then the question would be, why do you even bother? I mean, why do you have a culture, right? Why do you have values and behaviors? So it's really important that, you know, as you craft that, first of all, it's bottoms up. You know, it's not one of those tops down. So as you have bottoms up, then I think, you know, it needs to resonate with everyone. So the how becomes more important than the what. Or you could also argue that the what and the how, you know, should have 50-50 weightage. That it's also about performance, but it's also about how, the means and the ends, right? So yeah,
Okay.
but you can argue it either way where you are sometimes.
Yeah, okay, so a lot about trust, a lot about values, a lot about performance. It's very complicated. I did see a quote on LinkedIn this week from, well, it was quoted Peter Drucker, the famous management consultant, who talked about character and ethics versus performance and potential in his book, The Effective Executive. And he shared that by themselves, character and integrity do not accomplish anything, but their absence faults everything else. So just looking at performance is a very short-sighted approach, is what he was saying. And that brings us to the end of today's show, which leads me to thank today's guests, Chris Reed, Justin Liu, and Anitha Ramakrishnan for participating in the discussion and for supporting us in this pilot. Thank you to you two, our audience, for tuning in to our broadcast, HR Insights Making Headlines. I hope that you enjoyed our discussion, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. I must admit, I thought you were a wonderful audience. You're really great. Well done. You deserve a big pat on the back. If you're interested in being a panelist in future editions, please email me at the address on the following slide or message me on LinkedIn. Meanwhile, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and goodbye. Thank you, everyone.